Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about Hollow. There are many stories about the Hollow Earth. Stories, legends, rumors, and fantasies. First-hand accounts are rare. Photographs and artifacts are even more rare. In ancient times, the idea of subterranean realms exists and became intertwined with the concept of places such as the Greek Hades, the Nordic Svartalheim, the Christian Hell, and the Jewish Sheol, which details describing inner earth in Kabbalistic literature, such as the Zohar and Hesed el Avram. So, jazz musician Miles Davis had an album called Agartha. In 1975, Japanese visual artist Tadanori Yoku used elements of the Agartha legend, along with other Eastern subterranean myths, to depict an advanced civilization in the cover art for Miles Davis's Agartha album. Tadanori said he was partly inspired by his reading of the Hollow Earth book that was published in 1969 by author Raymond W. Bernard. In Hindu and Celtic legend, some believe there is a shared ancient connection through a lost antediluvian city. There are caves and underground entrances to these subterrestrial worlds. Some have connected the Hindu land of Aryavarta, or the abode of the excellent ones, a land ruled by a supernatural race thousands of years before the Great War laid out in the Mahabharata. Many believe this ancient race to be the same lineage as the ancient civilizations from Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu that were wiped out by war and cataclysmic events, driving them underground to Agartha. There is another world in the Hindu Mahabharata known as Patala that others point to. It shares many similarities and depictions of a subterranean world, though it is said they are at war with the Agarthans. Patala is the seventh layer of the underworld in the Hindu scriptures and is ruled by the Nagas, a half-human, half-reptilian species who are depicted with jeweled hoods that light their realm.
Like a cobra hood.
Exactly. The Naga are a highly advanced race with cutting-edge technology. Occasionally, they are said to abduct, torture, and kill humans, though other accounts refer to them as a positive impact on earthly events. Reptilians.
Look, when you start there, I don't even know where to start.
I'm coming out the door, guns blazing.
I was watching some stuff on the Discovery Channel, and they talk about people being abducted in San Francisco, and like some of these older cities have catacombs, and they talk about people walking, and like 3 or 4 of these reptiles coming up, snatching them, taking them underground. Like we're not talking about ancient time. We're talking about shit going on in the 80s or whatever. Yeah, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So and of course we know different cultures when it comes to the whole reptilian thing, but that's crazy when, that's the thing, and I think that these underground, you don't hear about the reptilian shit in the Midwest. I think this shit is regional. You know what I'm saying? I think there's different areas underground.
Think about it though. The Midwest is only warm in the summertime.
Yes, exactly.
And the ground freezes. So naturally they wouldn't be in areas where the ground would freeze. So you think.
I'm saying the same thing you're saying. If the reptilian race of people, would they have the same traits as reptiles in the current world? They don't reside in cold areas. They don't reside in Alaska. They don't reside in places like that. But if you're in California, where, again, it don't freeze, it's a different climate, that might be a thing, because I'm sure, say, it's warm underground, so it wouldn't be an issue underground, but it'd be an issue if you come up and freeze your ass off and die. So, but these underground civilizations, that shit pops up all the time. I shouldn't say all the time, because, it
pops up on occasion, but it never goes away completely.
No, you hear it in different cultures, different places. But that reptilian race, like I said, you hear about those abductions. See, when you hear the word abduction, you think of
UFOs,
flying saucers. You think of flying saucers, but there's other stories of abduction. And the other thing is, me and you had this talk about 5-6 years ago. I had watched a program where they talked about Bigfoot being aggressive. That these certain Native American tribes went to war with Bigfoot, and then they had a treaty with Bigfoot. But
That was in
Bigfoot was no,
Oklahoma.
well, no, not the modern day shit, maybe, but this old shit, this ancient shit was
No, there was a war with Bigfoot and humans in the 1800s in Oklahoma.
Oh, see, that's more recent. No, shit I was talking was older. That's recent. 1800s are recent, but they talked about Bigfoot taking children or taking women and going disappearing. So some people say they go to a different dimension, but some people also say that they reside underground in some of these areas. You hear about that more in the northwest, in that area. But again, also whenever they open up this shit underground, like in the southwest, them are usually giants. They talk about these areas are made for much larger people. Even when you look at some of the stuff in the Middle East, like Petra and stuff like that, these kind of underground civilizations or these civilizations that are cut into mountains, they're usually giants. They're usually people. These are made for people much larger than us. This underground civilization, I think, it's something to really talk about, something to really discuss.
In 1692, Edmund Halley, the same English scientist who studied the comet that bears his name, may have been the first to develop a scientific hypothesis about the hollow Earth. He composed the theory as a way of explaining anomalous compass readings. Halley's theory was that the planet is a series of nested spherical shells spinning in different directions, all surrounding a central core. In his estimation, based on readings of the magnetic field and what he knew of the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon on Earth, this model could account for any inaccuracies in his readings of the magnetic fields of the planet. He also posited that the space between each shell may have had luminous atmospheres capable of supporting life.
Now, let's talk about modern day discoveries. They discovered that big ass cave in China goes on for hundreds of kilometers. It's huge, thousands of kilometers or whatever. It has its own weather system inside of it. This is modern day shit. This is shit that's proven right now. I guess it rains and storms inside there. So that right there proves his theory that these pockets have their own atmosphere, have their own climate, I guess you could say.
In 1812, John Cleve Symes, Jr. published his circular number 1, declaring to the world that the earth is hollow. Symes, a veteran of the War of 1812 and an unsuccessful trader, soon became maybe the most famous and successful proponent of the hollow earth theory. His initial vision of the earth's interior was like a simplified version of Halley's multi-layered model, with the exception that Symes' version included huge holes at the north and south poles, which allowed access to the hidden world inside. These holes, in his unique addition to the hollow earth theory, would even come to be known as Symes holes. Symes believed that his theory was not science fiction, but science fact, and that it applied not only to Earth, but to all planetary bodies. To him, the whole universe was hollow. Though Symes himself never wrote a book about his ideas, several authors published works discussing his ideas. McBride wrote Symes' Theory of Concentric Spheres in 1826. It appears that Reynolds had an article that appeared as a separate booklet in 1827. Remarks of Symes' theories, which appeared in the American Quarterly Review. In 1868, a professor named W.F. Lyons published The Hollow Globe, which put forth a Symes-like hollow earth hypothesis, but didn't mention Symes. Although Symes' son, Americus, then published the Symes theory of concentric spheres to set the record straight. 4 years before that, Jules Verne published a novel called A Journey to the Center of the Earth, which proposed a weird world inside our own. And while it was not the first work of fiction to propose such a thing, it could be argued that the first such work of fiction regarding the weird world inside our own is Dante's poem, The Inferno. Verne's work quickly became the benchmark for such fantasy tales, yes, giving steam to a whole subgenre of subterranean science fiction. Many of these stories used the theories of Ed Haley and John Symes as jumping off points for tales of weird prehistoric jungles and highly advanced lost races of humans. The 1892 novel, The Goddess of Advadabar, or The History of the Discovery of the Interior World, used John Syme's model as a basis for a tale of a rich interior world inhabited by a race of spiritually enlightened beings.
Look, the whole thing about science fiction, even today, is that there's usually some kind of
Science fact
yeah,
in it.
yeah, and they jump on that, and either they elaborate where they kind of embellish, or they just give a story to something that they know about, and like, okay, we don't have rockets like that, but if we did this. So the whole idea that there's a whole genre of science fiction that blossomed all at the same time makes you think that there was some kind of research going on, or that something was happening in their lives where they're like, oh, hey, this hollow earth thing is a real deal, or this hollow earth thing is, the interesting hypothesis to talk about. And lots also, when that stuff happens, a lot of those books come out around the same time, kind of like rappers. You got to beat the nigga on wax kind of thing. Like, oh, I got a story too. So it apparently in that time period, something was going on, or there was some kind of research, or something was discovered that makes you think, or made them think, that hollow earth was pliable.
In 1886, a man named Cyrus Teed, an American, established the Assembly of the Covenant Church Triumphant and the World College of Life, a school of metaphysics, mostly with members of the mental science group. It was associated with the Society Arc Triumphant. He became convinced that it is mathematically impossible to discern whether we are inside or outside of a sphere, so we could live inside of a hollow universe. In the center, it would be the sun, with the planets and stars only appearing bright to us because they reflect sunlight on the surface of the concave earth. This land was called Koresh, which is the Hebrew translation of his own name, Cyrus. A small cult developed around him called the Koreshian Unity, after Cyrus Teed renamed himself Koresh. Dude, Koresh?
David Koresh.
Exactly. Why these motherfuckers named Koresh that have cults and shit, but
yeah,
anyway. So the Koreshans established an extensive colony in Estero, Florida in 1894. But most of the community disbanded after Teed's death in 1908. The church remained active in defending these ideas until at least 1982. Wow, for 100 years they kept this shit rocking. 90 years. Look, it's a cult. It's a cult that was around this shit. So, wow, and it was a commune before hippie communes, which is crazy.
See, okay, we before we talk about cult, let's remove the negative connotation that we have in modern day. For whatever reason, this shit was active for 100 years. So whether the people actually found something or in it, or it was a religion that they dealt with, or whatever, but it's just one of these things that for 100 years, that's a long time to be rocking with somebody. You know what I'm saying? With that concept or idea. 100 years, they're like, yeah, no, this underground thing, we serious about it. So I just think that's odd. I guess odd's not the right word. I think that shows that they really thought that shit was real, or they had some proof to it or something. They found something underground.
In his 1906 book, The Phantom of the Poles, William Reed presents a collection of reports of polar explorers on strange and unexplained phenomena, such as warm winds, deposits of dust, rocks embedded in icebergs, large ice-free areas, freshwater areas in the open polar ocean, and bizarre auroras, all in support of his belief that the polar areas are the vestibule to the interior of the hollow earth.
Okay, but scientifically, they've already proven that there's huge deposits of water inside the earth. They're saying that there's whole oceans underground that are larger than the oceans that are above ground. And this is being proved now. So if there's a hollow earth, they got to have, a water source. So they're talking about underground water being.
This is the crazy part. Is this just empty? Is it just empty ocean, or are there like creatures in there?
They think there's creatures in there, and since that story of that Russian creature, what's the creature 681, whatever it is, where they find an octopus that imitates them underwater and kills 3 or 4 of their guys, and then they take it back. They thought it was dead. It wasn't. They took it back to Russia. Yeah, that story right there of it's Antarctic, where they go swimming in this ocean, this underground water or whatever, and there's a creature that swims up on them and starts killing them. There's a whole story about that.
I think you're talking about Lake Vladivostok.
Vladivostok. Yes, correct. But you got to remember that lake was underground. They burrowed there for like 50, 60 years.
But see, what if that lake has an opening at the bottom that opens to another body of water that connects into the hollow earth ocean?
See, but you got to remember, Vostok was underground to begin with, so many miles or kilometers or whatever.
Okay, but in the Quran, it talks about heavy water. Now, the concept of heavy water is strange because it's water that has different properties. So why would this heavy water exist and not mix with water from other parts of the ocean or like bodies of water, unless this water is coming from an interior cavity inside the earth? And then it has different properties because the magnetic properties inside the earth are different than they are on the surface.
But hold on, Roscoe. You ain't even got to get that deep. When you look at the Amazon, when 2 rivers collide, they don't always mix right away. You'll see there's like a black Amazon and a blue Amazon, or you see it in the ocean. Like, we're not taught that, but you see where one ocean butts up against another one. Sometimes they don't mix immediately. It's more of a gradual mixing. It's not like,
well, there's a part where the Atlantic and the Pacific touch.
Yeah, and literally it looks different, and so. That was that whole thing when that one underwater guy said they bounced up against something under the ocean. Come to find out, there was a layer of dead animals and seaweed and plankton, and you bust through that, it's a whole another ocean underneath. And they were talking about that guy that died 6 weeks later mysteriously. But there's a video where he talks about, like literally, if you try to hit this, you'll bounce off. You have to find a way to penetrate it, and there's a whole nother ocean underneath. What we think water is just water and it joins immediately. No, if water has different properties, or water has a different saltiness, or water has, like you said, different magnetic composition or things like that, that water does not mix immediately or may not mix at all. So the idea of finding underground water, suppose we find it, but it's touching our ocean right now, but it's not mixing. So you hear these stories of underground lakes, or underwater lakes, excuse me. The Native Americans in Mexico talk about underwater lakes, and you see that it's a different salinity to it, and it doesn't not mix with the upper water. And so you have to pass through that, and you pass through that, and you go into another world, is what they said. So how do these people get down there? How these so-called primitives get down there? Because I think our ancestors weren't primitive.
Or you have these spacecraft that are made of light that can pass through transmedium. They're transmedium. They go through different spheres, like that one that you saw at Dubuque.
We all know that for some of these theories to work, that they would have to pass through a solid Earth or stop on a dime, like some Starman shit. You know what I'm saying? Like back in the day. So I just think it's odd that a lot of our older movies are much more in line with what we're experiencing now, and that makes me wonder: did people know some shit back then, or one of the things that was on my mind, and you know this, I got a whole article on it, but a lot of times when you watch these shows on the Discovery Channel, they touch on some crazy shit. So I'm watching this show about cattle mutilations, and we all know the theories: aliens this, aliens that. But in the last 5 minutes of this program, it's called Declassified, and it's about cattle mutilations, and it's episode 4, first season. But the last 5 minutes, he talks about a thing called Project Gas Buggy, and when he describes this, I'm like, well, what if our government knows about these underground cities or countries or whatever? What if we went to war with them, or what if we were at war with them and we don't realize it? That's why they're abducting our civilians, and we're assuming that these people are like eating us or something, but it's something else. It's like a hostage program.
Marshall Gardner wrote A Journey to the Earth's Interior in 1913. and he wrote an expanded edition in 1920. He placed an interior sun in the hollow earth. He even built a working model of the hollow earth and patented it. Gardner made no mention of William Reed in the book that Reed wrote in 1906. But he did take John Symes to task for his ideas. In the same time, Vladimir Obruchev wrote a fiction novel called Plutonia, where the hollow earth's interior possessed one inner central sun and was inhabited by prehistoric species. The interior was connected with the surface by a hole in the Arctic. And then coming forward to modern times, there was an article printed in a Russian newspaper called Pravda on November 18th, 2003, 20 years ago. For several years, the scientists preserved the secret of the shocking data of interpretation of photographs of our planet from space. In the ice of the North Pole, a huge hole could clearly be seen. Soon, a similar hole was discovered in Venus. Astronomers were shocked and questioned if these planets are hollow inside and what they have in their cores. This brings us to the concept of new physics. Russian physicist Fyodor Nevolin became famous after composing the theory of new physics. He explained the birth of the Earth in a different way. First, our planet was a huge cold lump wandering in the universe. Being influenced by the sun and the energy of the universe, it was heated up to a lava state and then started cooling. The crust covered the Earth. Meanwhile, the stuff under the crust continued boiling and turning into gas. Nevolin believes that the gases expanded and thus creating heat. In the core of our planet, hollow space aroused, and a part of gas went outside. Big gas throwing out took place in the north and south poles. Deep, big holes were created in these areas. Nevolin is sure the Earth is absolutely hollow inside and can even have a small sun there. The sun energy penetrates through the holes in the poles and accumulates in the center. If one supposes that the Earth is hollow inside and has its small sun, there can be life as well. There's photosynthesis, there's water, there's oxygen. 20th century scholars such as William Reed and Marshall Gardner also believe they could provide evidence of the existence of an inner world. And one of the most curious facts wielded in argument made by some Arctic explorers was that the air and water temperatures warmed as they approached the North Pole. Based on these observations, or other observations, they also claimed that the mammoths were not extinct but still lived in the interior of the Earth. And that brings us to Shambhala. Shambhala is often referred to as a civilization that exists deep inside the Earth. The Shambhala Tibetan headquarters of the spiritual government of humanity may be located in the vicinity of Balkh, a former Afghan settlement known as the Mother of Cities, according to Tibetan scholar Alexandra David Neal. The folk traditions of Afghanistan say that after the Muslim conquest, Balkh, called Shams-e-Bala, Candle High, which seems a transformation from the Sanskrit Shambhala into Persian. Now, I'm going to stop here for a second because people always talk about, well, there's giants that exist inside the earth and the hollow earth has giants. Giants have been spotted by American Special Forces operators in the deserts outside these cities in Afghanistan, not far from this place called Balkh. In Kandahar, there is an incident that you can look up online. It's called the Kandahar Giant. Kandahar and Balkh are not far from each other. So, in this story, there is a Marine scout sniper that was posted up and he was waiting for enemy combatants to pass when he saw a man wearing a loincloth. He said this guy had to be 9 to 10 feet tall. And he said he was moving across the desert and he had a cow under his arm. And he said he was holding a cow under his arm the same way that a human man would hold a puppy.
I see. I thought those were two separate incidents because
There's
that
two
sniper.
separate instances. The one I'm talking
Yeah,
about with the
yeah.
sniper is the guy
He
who
sees this
saw
motherfucker
but here's the
tearing
thing
him.
though. No. He shot a 50 caliber rifle round at this motherfucker, and it just glanced off his shoulder. It glanced off the shoulder of the giant. Now, there's that, and then there's a team of Navy SEALs encountered a
Yeah.
giant in a cave. Now, this giant, the only way they were able to kill him was firing continuously at his face. It said for 1 minute. For 1 minute, they fired continuously at his face, and it brought him down. And then there's a story from that same giant, how they had him on a pallet. And they said it must have been, I think, a wooden pallet that was probably one of those long extended ones. I've seen those at work. And those things are probably like, I think, 7 feet long, 7 to 8 feet long. Maybe even longer. I think they're like 8 feet. But this giant was crawled like curled into a fetal position on this pallet, and they were transporting the body of this giant outside the country to study it.
What? Hold it. You left out two parts. Our
Oh,
friend Hillary Clinton.
hold on a second. Before you get to that, there's another part of this story. So apparently, these giants have incredible psychic ability, and there's some type of headband that you have to wear to protect yourself from the psychic influence of this creature.
I thought we were talking about you taking it there, Roscoe. Look, so there's a couple stories of this to this story. One story is that one of those emails from Hillary Clinton talks about Nephilim DNA, that she had a request that they believe that these giants are Nephilim, and they wanted a copy of the Nephilim DNA. That you look, this is Google Hillary Clinton Nephilim DNA. Number one. Number two, there was another one where a military unit was underground, finds this like a whole city underground with technology and everything, and some of these things are like in suspended animation. One of them comes to life, and this motherfucker's fast as hell. And most of their bullets didn't work until somebody fucked around and hit them with the copper. They didn't hit him with the bullet. They hit him with the copper that the shell that hit it by, and the motherfucker got sick and died. So if they have some kind of allergy to copper. That's the best way to describe it. You know, most bullets are lead, but the copper shell is copper in some kind of way. That's when they realized that's how they had to fight this creature. But which made me wonder, like, okay, if you look at Africa, there was this whole thing when Ivan Van Serma talks about when they found those three Africans in South America, but they had these gold spears, but the spears were like 25% gold, 14% nickel, but most of it was copper. It makes you think, like, wonder if our ancestors found out about that copper allergy or whatever, or weakness, and that's how they were able to defeat these giants. They found out that they, maybe that's how we affected civilization. We had to fight these dudes. You hear about Native Americans fighting those redhead giants in the southeast. You hear about Native Americans having to fight these giants. So what if that was one of the things that we used to beat these dudes? Was that our ancestors ran around with these spears that had the right amount of copper in them. That's just one of my theories. I'm not saying it's true, but like I said, there are stories of this military unit having to fight one of these. And Roscoe just told you that this guy had some kind of mental abilities, because they said he was moving fast as hell, but they couldn't tell if he's moving that fast or if he's just fucking with us. So here's where I get I have a question, because some of these stories you hear about the Hollow Earth civilizations, they're more advanced than our civilization, or their civilization is much older, but it was abandoned for some reason. So, but then you see these guys running around naked, Now, I'm not saying your fashion means that you're intelligent or not intelligent, but we know that these creatures are physically superior to us, but we hear these stories. So, are they real smart, or do they have just some kind of mental ability that I don't know? But I just think it's odd that we got a nigga running around in a loincloth 10, 20 feet tall, but we also hear about this underground civilization or this underground technology that is discovered or found every once in a while by our military. So I think that's I don't makes me think there's more than one country or more than one something going on underground, because you have some that are really advanced and you have some that are really powerful, but they have other abilities other than just regular technology.
Okay, back to Shambhala. So let's talk about the Kala Chakra and the Shambhala. The word Kala Chakra means cycles of time. According to the original Kala Chakra system, there are 3 cycles: external, internal, alternative. The external and internal cycles deal with time as we normally know it, while the alternative cycles are practices for gaining liberation from these two. Time in Buddhism, defined as a measurement of change. All changes are cyclical, and in that pattern repeats, and although the events of each cycle are not completely identical. Externally, the universe passes through cosmic, astronomical, astrological, and historical cycles. On an internal level, the body goes through the physiological cycles, which bring associated mental and emotional cycles. Kala Chakra has also received prominent attention in the medical and astrological institutes of all 4 Tibetan Buddhist traditions within Tibet itself, Mongolia, and other parts of Central Asia. This is because calculations for compiling the Tibetan calendar and determining planetary positions are a large part of Tibetan astrology and a certain part of Tibetan medical knowledge that derive from the external and internal Kala Chakra teachings. The Mongolian calendar, as well as astrological and medical systems, subsequently derived from the Tibetan ones. Kala Chakra is thus the Buddhist equivalent of the patron saint of these sciences. Just as universes form, expand, contract, and disappear, and then form once again, individual beings pass through continuing rebirths with repeated conception, growth, old age, and death. The Kala Chakra is an encyclopedic collection of Vajrayana Buddhist knowledge, including material on astrology, the human body, ritual, and meditation practice. The Kala Chakra tradition gained prominence in India sometime in the early 11th century, making it the last of the tantric traditions to develop in India. The Kala Chakra eventually disappeared along with Buddhism in India, but flourished in the Tibetan world, where it is still studied and practiced today. The reason why we're discussing the Kala Chakra right now is because this system of science and astrology and meditation and ritual is essential, because it is the connecting link between the surface civilization and the hollow earth underground civilizations. So hold on,
Man,
hold that thought. Hold that thought.
no. I was saying, like, you'll understand why I think what I think
Okay.
once you finish talking. Yeah, I'm digging what you're saying.
Hold on.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, brother.
All right. Smell what I'm cooking. So, King Shushandra brought the Kala Chakra teachings back to Shambhala. The original text speaks about this special land and its place in the countless universes that exist. Each universe goes through cycles as well. There are empty periods followed by periods of success, of expanding, abiding, and perishing. The cycles repeat without beginning or end. The world system in which we live contains unlimited universes. Each universe has an innumerable world system, each world containing several continents and lands. So I'm going to stop right here. There is a passage in the Bible that says, "My master has many mansions and many houses." He's talking about different universes. So anyway, according to the Kala Chakra, on the land of one of the lands on the southern continent of our world system is Shambhala. Shambhala plays a prominent role in the Kala Chakra system. Most people are curious to know what the Shambhala actually is, what Shambhala actually is and where it's located. Although there may be a place in this world representative of Shambhala, that is not the actual fabled land. Shambhala cannot be found on the map of our planet or even in some distant world. It is, however, a human realm according to Kalachakra. Meditation masters have written guidebooks in both Sanskrit and Tibetan for reaching Shambhala. They describe the journey as a physical one only up to a certain point. The journey to Shambhala, then, is primarily a spiritual one. Both Indian and Tibetan masters have written guidebooks for reaching Shambhala, but they all agree that a physical journey is not enough. Nevertheless, certain locations on our planet do represent Shambhala. The Kabul region of Afghanistan, Balkh, may have represented it as a historical reference. In other texts, the reference seems to be Mount Kailash region in southwestern Tibet. Now, I want to stop right here because when Al-Qaeda and Taliban were going through Afghanistan at the beginning of the Afghan war, they were destroying Buddhist statues. They were destroying Buddhist statues that were hidden in the sides of mountains in these areas that were considered the physical representation or the entry point to Shambhala.
You got to remember, in their religion, they call those graven images. So they use it as an excuse to destroy anything they see that's a statue. But this is where the most important thing. So
hold on.
Did you
wait. I got to finish this part.
Yes, sir.
So
I'm there.
Original Kalachakra text gives the calculation for determining the length of the shortest day of the year, the winter equinox, as we travel progressively north. When calculations are performed, the latitude corresponding to Shambhala is that of Mount Kailash, which is also called the source of bliss and the home of Shiva in Hindu mythology. Shambhala is said to be circular, surrounded by mountains, and shaped like an 8-petaled lotus, possibly symbolizing the heart chakra center. Go ahead. What do you want to say now?
You got a lot. So when you're dealing with certain, there was recently an interview where the British guy was talking to an Egyptian guy and this gay black guy. The Egyptian guy says, "I have a problem with Kevin Hart." So you do realize if they will not let black people into Egypt right now if you're considered Afrocentric. If you believe that your people started Egypt and not my people, you know that, right? So this guy is saying
he's like the Jon Stewart of Egypt.
No, not that guy. No, I'm not talking about Zawari. This wasn't even Zawari. This was a different dude. And so they're all upset about Cleopatra, and everybody's saying it because Netflix has Cleopatra as being black. First off, there were 4 Cleopatras. Cleopatra is so great that they made it a title, so there's actually more than one Cleopatra. That's a whole other conversation. But what's very important is about when it comes to culture. See, people love to talk about so his argument is that's not your culture. This is my culture. He's lying.
Yeah, but see, that guy's an Arab, though. And the Arabs didn't get to Egypt until all the partying was done. After all the cool shit was already made and built, then the Arabs showed up.
But there's a couple of examples of this, and you must realize that. But if you pay attention to conqueror cultures, these Arabs are conquerors. And what's one thing they don't like? Graven images. Now, why would that matter? Now, if you're saying that you don't want to see somebody make a graven image of Buddha or of Muhammad, I dig it. But whenever they see any statue, they destroy it. They're destroying culture. They're destroying the ability that this ain't theirs. The only reason they didn't destroy the pyramids is because they're not strong enough to do it. The only reason they didn't destroy the Sphinx, and this goes back to the conversation with Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, where he found the Sphinx's nose. He says, they were in somebody's private collection. I contact the Arab delegation. I have an English guy on the phone, and the Arab delegation who run Egypt didn't want it back. But he's like, I have the remnants of the Sphinx's nose. Now that's a big deal. So the rumor goes Napoleon's people shot the nose off because it's of a black person. But the people who live there now are not the original people. So these so-called graven images, these statues that they're breaking, all that does is ruin history and make it so that they can claim something that they did not do. Now, this goes back to my theory that I'm not saying that we're actually at war, but what happens if two countries violate each other, they go to war? They were talking about, oh boy, he's that rich guy, has a bunch of girls or whatever. He was visiting, what's it? The two countries that are side by side, Armenia and Kajamania, whatever it is. And so he was visiting their military, and they let him shoot off a rocket launcher. They said, yeah, shoot over there. So he shoots a mountain that crosses a barrier, and that's literally in another country. Now these two countries were already at war. Now they want this guy. They want to fuck this dude up because of it. He said, I apologize. He said the guy gave me a rocket launcher and told me to shoot the mountain. But I'm like, whatever. But when you violate somebody's boundaries, what happens if we, on purpose or accidentally, violate these underground communities or underground countries or whatever? You know, and the reason that popped into my mind is because I was telling you guys earlier that I saw a show about cattle mutilation. But in the last 5 minutes, they talk about something called Operation Gas Buggy. So let me tell you what Operation Gas Buggy is, and then I'll read an article from the New York Times that makes it worse than what we ever imagined. So I assume this was a long time ago, but this is actually during the 80s that we're still doing this Operation Gas Buggy. And so one of the things, how this has to do with cattle mutilation. So at one point, they were using nuclear explosions to release natural gas underground. And so the guy's like, well, how often? He's thinking it happened once or twice. No, they did it 800 times.
Project Gas Buggy. On December the 10th, 1967, a 29 kiloton bomb was exploded almost a mile underground near Dulce, New Mexico, which knocked observers off their feet over 2 miles away. The gas buggy blast created an underground cavern approximately 160 feet in diameter by 333 feet tall.
It gets worse.
So hold on a second. So, okay, 300, that's a 30-story building. That's a skyscraper underground. Okay? Hold on a second.
Hold on.
Hold on a second.
I'm sorry.
Imagine putting an oversized football field on a stick like a popsicle and pushing it down 3,800 feet down into solid rock and twirling it. A few seconds later, after the explosion, the molten gas-lined cavern collapsed, creating a chimney filled with rubble and debris. Geologists later estimated that fractures extended out from the cavern a few hundred feet in all directions.
It gets worse.
All right, hold it. So, what a lot of people do not know that are listening to this is that there was an incident in Dulce, New Mexico that happened at an underground military base. Now, how was this underground base formed? Either it was done with these huge boring machines, these drilling machines that are huge. They're like 40 feet tall in diameter, and they can just drill right into the ground. Or they cleared out this cavity that was created by Operation Gas Buggy, and they built a base down in there. Hold on a second now. Hold on.
You got two more theories. Hey, Roscoe, there's two more theories to that. You got two more theories.
Yeah, I know. Hold tight. Now, the thing is, though, there have been incidents with aliens in these underground bases in Dulce, New Mexico, and how people talk about there's an underground alien biolab at Dulce, New Mexico. So since the mid to late 70s, there have been all sorts of rumors about an underground laboratory beneath the town of Dulce. And there are those that believe that the U.S. government has a 7-story underground facility at Dulce on the Jicarilla Apache Reservation.
Oh my God, I'm gonna
Hold on.
kill you with this next
Hold on, hold on, hold
article.
on, hold on, hold on.
Oh my God, you're killing me. You're
According
killing me, my nigga.
according to some, it's inhabited by extraterrestrials and connected to Los Alamos by an 80-mile tunnel.
Okay, so but suppose that so there's two more theories that you left out when it comes to the underground lab. What if we inherited the underground lab? What if we found the underground lab and then we just put our shit over it? That could have happened also. Like it was already there. Or there's the program you're talking about is not gas buggy. It's called Plowshare. So would you like me to? So oh God, you're killing me. There's so much shit to talk about. But so let me finish talking about the
But
whole.
at Dulce, apparently this is an underground joint base shared by extraterrestrials and the United States military, and it's home to inhumane and cruel human experimentation. Go ahead.
So oh man, this is so complicated. So back to the television show. How we got to gas buggy to begin with. So this guy brings up gas buggy, and he says there were over 800 nuclear explosions done underground to release natural gas. Now, there's a problem with that, but let's finish up to talk about the cattle mutilations. So what they're saying is when they did this, radiation was released, and there was a lot of radiation poisoning and stuff done to the cattle, to thousands of heads of cattle, let alone the people. And so what they would do, that's why they would remove the tongues in certain parts. They were actually removing that stuff because now those were the prime areas affected by radiation poisoning. So now these cows have had their tongues cut out,
Yes.
certain parts cut off of them. Now they look like, oh, this is some weird shit. No, it was our actual government covering up, but also studying the effects of this radiation. Now, this is a New York Times article called Project Gas Buddy.
And Catch 88 and the 88 85. Catch 85. And 85 refers to the radioactive krypton created by the explosion
Yes.
released in the subsequent flaring of natural gas. The records indicate that gas buggy produced 295 cubic feet of gas. This is over 5 times as much as well as expected to the yield prior to the blast. The Department of Energy reports discuss flaring or burning off of the gas during a series of production tests that lasted until 1973.
Roscoe, you missed the most important part. That natural gas is now radioactive. Also, it creates the 85 isotope, like you said,
Krypton.
which Krypton 85. But that water, it creates nuclear water from that, and it runs off. So you actually have water. So that's why I said, what if, because of this gas buggy experiments or whatever you want to call it,
that brought the aliens' attention to that, and they're like, "All right, cool, let's work together." I'm not talking about
flying aliens. I'm talking about the ones underground where they're like, "Hey, but hold it." This article is even worse. Okay, so 1970 article, a New York Times archive, Boulder, Colorado. At first glance, nothing could appear more innocent, indeed more laudable than Plowshare. Plowshare was a program, the Atomic Energy Commission program to develop peaceful use for nuclear explosion. Peaceful. Plowshare has been in operation since 1957 as a division of the Peaceful Nuclear Explosives since 1961. And it has come up with ideas for uses for nuclear blasts, for building harbors, dams, highway cuts, canals, and stimulate oil and natural gas production, among other applications. So Plowshare is the use of nuclear explosions to do good. But the problem is, I'll condense it. The problem is they always give off radiation. Now, when they do underground, this explains that when they do underground nuclear testing, it's done perfectly where there is no radiation given off. Everything is so far down it doesn't matter. But when you do this for at the bottom of an oil mine or the bottom of a natural gas mine, it's always radiation seeps out. And it talks about how it creates fucked up water. It talks about the different incidents that you talk about. And there's a real bad one here. Nuclear weapon tested deep underground, and when conducted perfectly, it doesn't happen. This talks about that Krypton 85 passing out into, also releases tritium, radioactive hydrogen, radioactive natural gas, converted, even when they burn it off, it still creates water that's radioactive. So they're actually poisoning people, and they did this 800 times. So all I'm saying is, if there is an underground civilization, and you got somebody letting off nukes near you, wouldn't that cause a problem? And so, like I said, if you ever just look up this article, like he told you, Project Gas Bug and Catch 85. It's mind blowing because we're thinking that like, oh man, our government has our best. Yeah, the government had good intentions, but they found out early on that this shit was contaminating the environment. And so I'm saying, like, if somebody's downstairs and we're giving them radioactive water, we're doing nuclear explosions above them, we're releasing radium and tritium and all this other stuff into their atmosphere. Oh hell yeah, they would have a problem with us, don't you think?
Listen, there's an article by the Huffington Post, and it's published on April 20th, 2014. And it talks about how a Air Force explosive engineer named Philip Schneider worked for the United States government with high-level security clearance and claimed that in 1979 he participated in the building of a secret underground base in Dulce, New Mexico, and it was there that a horrific battle played out, leaving 60 humans dead and countless subterranean aliens fighting for their life. Schneider asserts that he was suspicious of the engineering operation while noticing the presence of Green Berets and Special Forces.
For no reason. Why
you're building an underground base and you got Green Berets and Special Forces dudes down there? For what? His fears were realized after drilling underground. He came face to face with a 7-foot-tall gray alien. Obviously, he freaked out and grabbed his pistol he was carrying, because that's what engineers do. And shot and killed 2 aliens. Another alien shot some laser plasma ball or whatever at him and blew off some of his fingers. He was saved by a Green Beret who allegedly gave his life for him. In all, 60 human people allegedly lost their lives that day at the alien-human battle of Dulce, New Mexico.
Now, hold it. So here's me being duct tape. What if the plowshare and the gas buggy were cover-ups? What if our government was already at war with these motherfuckers, and those 800 nuclear explosions were just the opposite?
Exactly.
they were actively fighting.
Operation Plowshare and Operation Gas Buggy, they're psyops.
Yeah. What if those names are bullshit, and that we were already at war with these motherfuckers? And the reason we don't see them more often, the reason we don't see giants, is because our government said, well, fuck it, let's just nuke these niggas. What if our government did 800 nuclear explosions underground to stop those civilizations, to kill them off? Because let's be honest, the American government has killed off whole races of people before. You white folks, when was the last time you seen a Tasmanian, my nigga? You know what I'm saying? You've killed whole races of people before. So what if our government, it wasn't about the nuclear, what if it wasn't about the natural gas and oil production? What if it was about, hey, we found these underground civilizations, these motherfuckers we're scared of, they have shit we ain't got, let's just start blowing shit up. And what if on the flip side, we're the aggressors? Or what if the flip side is we couldn't beat these motherfuckers, so we just nuked them? So now they can't come upstairs anymore. We close their entrances. There's a lot of possibilities here. And that episode of Declassified, he even says, what if what really happened is way worse, and that the cattle mutilations are just a cover up? What if those are? It makes me, the reason I say that could be the case. If you were doing these underground explosions, you should have got enough natural gas right away. And early on, you would have realized, hey, we're fucking shit up. We're making these people sick. But the reason that you went 800 times is because you couldn't stop. Because you had an enemy that was more whatever than you. And so that you had to do it 800 times. You would figure after 100 times, they would have realized, like, oh man, we're polluting the environment. We're doing nuclear. Making radioactive water. We're making the cows sick. You would have realized that early on and stopped. But if that's just a cover story, and the real reason that we were doing it was because we had an enemy underground,
right?
And
but there's different races, ultra terrestrials, They can probably travel in space and different dimensions. So there's different races of ultra-terrestrials that you're dealing with here. But Richard E. Byrd, let's finish strong. Richard E. Byrd was the first man, along with crew member Floyd Bennett, to fly over the North Pole on May 9th, 1926. During his Arctic flight of 1,700 miles beyond the North Pole, he reported by radio that he saw below him not ice and snow, but land areas consisting of mountains, forests, green vegetation, lakes, and rivers, and in the underbrush saw a strange animal resembling a mammoth. He would later fly over the South Pole. He would make several trips to both poles, culminating in the summer of 1946, codenamed Operation High Jump. It was the most massive sea and air operation ever attempted in Antarctica, involving 13 ships, including 2 seaplane tenders and an aircraft carrier, and a total of 25 airplanes. What the fuck are y'all doing with all that military hardware unless you are going after somebody and you intend to engage with somebody? And who they were trying to engage were the Nazis that had retreated to the South Pole after Germany lost the war, but the Nazis didn't. And so in the Nazi lore, there are pockets of Nazis who belong to the Thule Society. And we've talked about the Thule Society in the show before. They believe the teachings of Madame Blavatsky. So they also believe that there are individuals, ascended individuals, who exist inside the Earth. And they believe the way to get there is through the North Pole, which would be too dangerous, fucking with the U.S., or the South Pole. So since nobody goes to the South Pole, they're going to the South Pole. Well, Byrd went down there. He saw some cool shit. He had an interaction with these ultra-terrestrials, which he talks about
UFOs,
in his book. Now, the book was not published until after he died. It was published by his son. It's called The Missing Diary of Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Now, it's said to be his missing journal described his mysterious voyage inside the Earth, which was never revealed to the public. Supposedly, Byrd saw a great land beyond the pole that was not covered in ice and had met beings of supernatural countenance. Dude, there's a lot of shit going on here.
There's a lot to unpack. Look, all we're saying is that if these hollow earthers are real, there's a chance that they're supposed to be older and smarter than us. If these hollow earthers are real, they might be physically superior to us. And if these hollow earthers are real, you know, they might be peaceful, they might not be peaceful. And if there's other races, who knows? Like, just because one guy gets along with you don't mean the other guy's going to get along with you. So Admiral Byrd talks about seeing this different shit. He talks about encountering UFOs. He talks about that shit. So, look, it's hard to know what to believe, and I hate using the word believe because you don't know. But there's definitely something going on underground. There's definitely bases underground. And like my partner said, we were told that they have boring devices and drilling devices, but we're also being told that they use nukes for safe nukes. And also, that article talks about private organizations having access to nukes, because, you know, it's cheaper and shit like that. So let's not even get onto that whole debacle. But yeah, there's something going on underground, and we just don't know about it. And I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's definitely real.
When you read this book, The Missing Diary of Admiral Richard Byrd, he talks about he landed his plane and he met one of these ultra-terrestrials, and he describes that they look like regular people, but slightly different, only small differences. And he mentions how they have, you know, powers of telepathy and all types of side properties. But the things that he discusses are about how nuclear war is a problem and how humanity harnessing atomic energy in that way is a problem for them because it can blow their asses up.
But that was a big deal back then. You got to remember, it's the atomic age. I remember the cartoons. You know, you would watch those cartoons, those old shows. This is the atomic age. And this is the atom, and protons move, and you learned about electricity and shit like that. And I'm like, for one, that's why I think we're much more advanced than we let on. and that a lot of our technology is hidden from us because we were knocking it out the park back in the day. We was doing all kinds of advancements, and all of a sudden we got the cell phone and we chilled. It's like they hit you with social media and we stopped discovering shit and we stopped innovating. So be careful about this social media tip because it'll placate you. You know what I'm saying? It'll make you complacent.
Right, but this show about the hollow earth and how when you dig into the Kala Chakra and the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism and how it talks about how
a physical, spiritual
you cannot
place.
get there physically. You can only get part of the way physically. And then once you reach a certain point, the only way through that membrane is through the spirit realm. So then you have to transform your energy, yourself into complete plasma. Just like these spaceships that we're seeing now, these trans-medium spaceships, you have to transform your energy, your body into plasma to penetrate this realm. The same way you were talking about that part of the ocean where all those dead fish and all those carcasses are, you have to penetrate it to get through that membrane. And that is how people are reaching hollow earth. So that's why I brought up the Kala Chakra, because it is the link between the surface world and the subterranean world. And you have to shift your awareness to see what so your two eyes can see what the third eye already sees.
Look, you were talking about these ships we're seeing, and they're passing through. If a ship is passing through, that means there could be a base 2,000 feet underground, and they have the technology to phase through it, and then and that's how they get home. So they're at home minding their own business, but then they got to make a run to go get some shit. So they pass through this rock and rubble, and like I said, it's hard to believe, but like I said, I've seen some crazy shit. So that's all I can tell y'all. I'm not trying to convince anybody of what I've seen. That's not how this works. I'm just making you aware that I've seen some shit that I'm like, either this thing passed the ground or it stopped on a dime and went left or right. And either way, all that shit is amazing. You dig what I'm saying? Whatever the fuck happened was some amazing shit. That's all I can tell you.
Well, there are worlds that are underneath us, that are beyond us, and we access these worlds sometimes through the astral plane, through meditation, through sleeping. But as long as you remain in this meat suit mentality, that this show me reality where science and peer-reviewed journals and all this nonsense that relies on a empirical system, you'll never see it. Nikola Tesla didn't rely on peer-reviewed anything. He just used his insight and he made shit happen. He made shit manifest. Okay? That's the only way you're going to reach these places or see these places or understand. Forget about even going there. Just how to understand that these places possibly exist is you cannot grasp this with your normal rational mind. It won't work. And you'll stay trapped in this world. And look, that's cool. If you want to stay trapped in this world, then that's you. You'll never explore. You'll never go beyond. All right, that's cool. That's your lot in life. But if you do, the way you reach there is by shifting your mentality. And in Buddhism, you hear about this a lot, is change your mind, change your world. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.